So part 2 to the P2 methanol recovery column and all that. Yeah, so as I was explaining, if I can remember what I was just talking about there 10 minutes ago, when the when the distillation tower was being built, there was a dispute between Garetth Vokins, the Technical Director at Nipa Laboratories, and QVF, the Dutch firm that make industrial-sized glassware. Now, I only know of QVF who actually do it. If you want test tubes or laboratory-sized glassware, there's probably quite a few people that do it. But for actual industrial size, and this P2 methanol recovery column was 3 stories high. You go up a ladder onto a platform, up another ladder onto another platform, up another ladder onto the platform on the top. So it's quite big, okay, and it fills up 2,000 litre IBCs, industrial bulk containers. If you don't know what they are, IBCs, industrial bulk containers. So you've got 2,000 litres of methanol there, which is highly flammable, of course. So the story was that Garetth Vokins boasted about this to me, that he threatened QVF that they'd never install one piece of glassware with the whole of British Tile Products ever again if they didn't come back and put the packing right in the tower, because they were saying they designed the tower, that they manufactured it, they gave it to them to erect, and as their contractors had done it wrong, then they have to pay and then they got threatened by Garetth Vokins, and they came back and put it right. Okay, so the distillation tower was up and running 2 years before I got there, and it was being run by the previous chemical engineer, Steve Blow, who had graduated from Swansea University with a degree in chemical engineering, the same as I had, and I was there with him. We had the same job for 1 week for me to learn the ropes and what the job was about, because then he was off to make televisions with LG in Newport. See, he said he felt he was too highly qualified for the things they were making him do there. And Garetth Vokins wanted me because there was a lot of mechanics on the CV. I had a girlfriend with a Beetle, which can be hard. If you have a hard life, you got a girlfriend with one of the old Beetles. You don't do it all the time, and she was being a feminist. I will never be put in a position of subservience by a man, so I was working under a car for free, and she wouldn't even pass the spanners, and that makes it very, very difficult and laborious. So you have to crawl in and out every time you want to change the spanner. So she wouldn't be, and her boots just got bigger. We went out for 3.5 years, and her boots, so these little ankle length, lightweight, not even DMs, these little purple leather boots. And then by the time we split up, her boots were coming up to her knees, and they were covered in metal, and they were big and nasty and black and dangerous looking. So she had these. So anyway, that was Alison. So this was on my CV about welding and restoring my camper van and doing a lot of mechanics and being hands-on. So they gave me the job, and the story with the distillation tower, when this is in the previous videos, that Garetth Vokins didn't mention to QVF that there's quite a lot of para-hydroxy benzoic acid in the feedstock. It wasn't just water and methanol, 10% methanol, 90% water, and you want to recover it back up to 99% methanol from the top product to use it again, you see, and then the rest down to the effluent. He didn't mention that, and it didn't actually affect the distillation process, and the product you got off the top was fine anyway. But what it did affect is the mechanism by which the feedstock was transferred to the feed tanks. When it came down the pipe from the top, it would come down the hill when the supervisors opened the valve, because they'd done the batch, and down it goes. And then it goes into an interceptor tank with a pair of level gauges on it. When if it gets too full, that will cause a red light to flash at the top, and they had a sign at the top saying, when red light flashes, supervisor will divert to effluent immediately. So this stuff would come rushing down the hill through a pump into this tank, okay, and the pump's got a strainer, you see. Now because the para-hydroxy benzoic acid is in it, that would block the strainer. So you've got a pump, zzz, And before that, there's a strainer, which is just like a gauze. It's like looks like it's just a little fit-in, and there's a piece of gauze in it with holes in it, and that will stop anything going into the pump and damaging it. Say somebody drops a nut and bolt down the pipe by mistake, and it ends up going down to the pump. It would smash the pump to bits. So you've got to have a strainer out of every pump, because, or some other bit or piece of anything that could damage the pump. So you always put a strainer before a pump, and it would block with hydroxy benzoic acid. The strainer would block, so then it wouldn't pump out to the interceptor tank, and it would overflow, cause the lights to flash at the top, and they divert down the effluent. So for 2 years before I got there, this red light kept flashing because the para-hydroxybenzoic acid was clogging the strainer, and Steve Blow would kind of amble about, chatting to people, and go and see the fitter, and when the red light's flashing, and an afternoon would go by quite happily, walking around with your hands in your pockets, seeing, if he's over here, or if he's over there, and where's he gone now, and finally chatting to him for a bit, and then borrowing a spanner, an adjustable spanner, and then going to unblock the strainer, and then putting it right, and then leaving it. And so I thought, okay, well, he left after a week, and I thought, well, that needs sorting out then, doesn't it, really, because this thing's not realising its payback, because he's done the calculations that you actually process and recover the methanol from everything that goes down there, and it's not going down there because the red light's flashing, and he's sending it down the effluent, and they've been doing it for 2 years before I got there. So so what was supposed to be recovered for methanol was going down the effluent drain without even going past the distillation tower part, which cost £500,000. So I thought, right, we're going to have special tools in the control room next to the tower for unblocking that strainer. And we're going to get a little tub and have some methanol in it, a little ice cream tub with a lid, and just a little bit in the bottom there, so you can wash the strainer out, or you can use the steam pipe, okay, which has got a dead leg of condensate in it, and you've got to run all that out first and then blast it all over the steam. You could do it that way. So I got some tools ordered and got them put in there, and a pair of gloves, and then started trying to write an idiot's guide for the supervisors. Now that was the hard part, you see, because during the day I was there, the red light would flash, the supervisor would come and see me immediately, I'd unblock the strainer immediately, he'd hold up, he wouldn't divert it to effluent, he'd then send it down to my tower, and I would then distill it in the tower, because I was running the tower, I knew how to start it up, shut it down, and all about the control of it, using a computer and so on, it's controlled with a computer. There's a computer in there, there's a screen with a little graphic on, and you've got the flow rates and everything, and there it is, So we usually run about 850 kilogram per hour, but you could get it up to 1,000. So that got sorted out under my watch. It was my responsibility to run the tower, but by this time I was only there from September to the end of January, and the Viper got it in his head that he didn't like me, and that what he was going to do is explain to these people in Cadder's Head in Manchester that it was all my fault, and he'd said graduates were useless, and it takes 2 years before they can do anything at all, and he's fed up of training them up from being useless to being useful in 2 years after their university, for them just to go off and get other jobs, making televisions or whatever, because they feel they're too highly qualified, and it happened before, and this time he wasn't going to mess around, and he was going to sack the graduate engineer and say it's all his fault that this distillation tower wasn't realising its 3-year payback, you see, and it wasn't all my fault at all. It was all his fault, because he had set this system up, and he'd been there for 2 years, quite happily, with this going on under his nose, with all this feedstock going down straight to effluent instead of going down to the tower. And I changed the sign, when red light flashes, supervisor will make checks and decide whether to divert to effluent. In other words, go down the bottom and unblock the strainer and send it down the tower, don't send it down the effluent drain. But then problems then, oh, it's cold, oh, it's dark, there's a light of everything. the tools are there ready, you know. Oh, the supervisors won't do it in the middle of the night, and then try to give you crankies in the middle of the night then, you know, because the thing's not working or whatever, and panics, which they never did to Steve Blow, you know. Or say, you know, you can go on call out and you have a lot of extra money, but we'll get you a mobile phone, but they never bothered with that. So so you go out in the evening and then they can't get in touch with you, and they're complaining, and it's like, well, you know, everything was right during the day, and they knew what to do. They only had to go and unblock a strainer. The supervisors were supposed to do it, okay? But because I'd said they were supposed to do it, they were in rebellion. And I think a lot of that was stirred up by Prince Charles, looking back on it. That, you know, that I'd asked them to do something, and everything, because it's the same happening now. I've asked the letting agents change the tap, fix the radiator, change the locks. There's a stalker. I bought a new bicycle. Somebody's gone and ridden it up and down the road doing wheelies, twisted the handlebars off, twisted the light off on the wonk, and twisted the rear reflector on the wonk, just because, oh, your new bike, is it? Well, let me have a go. Probably ass flaps. Sergeant Julian Bennett, who kidnapped Madeleine McCann, who pays the letting agent's bribe. So whatever I asked them to do, they'd make their own countermanding orders, just like they've done, just like they're doing now in 2012, just they were doing back in 1997. So there it is. That's why Garetth Vokins gave me the sack and said it was giving me the blame for his fault, that his distillation tower wasn't realising its 3-year payback period, and I had fixed the problem. But he had got the accountant to fiddle the figures and told me to stop collecting data on the tower, and they decided to make up their own. So they could tell the people in Manchester that that it had been sorted out by firing me for the problem that he had caused, you see, by his neglect of the feedstock being shoved down the effluent drain for 2 years before I got there. You see, and that is why I felt injustice about that, and that they should apologise and give me a good job reference. And because I was only there 3.5 months, and I moved there and all that, and it's going to look bad on my CV, that they should pay me some damages for the for messing me about, you know, saying move up here, it's fine, and then giving you the sack, you know, and you just moved in and you only lived there 2 and a bit months, and you're going to move out again, is it? You know, I mean, that's not good, you know, especially when you're blaming me for someone else's fault, you know, for the Garetth Vokins, the Viper's fault. That it was very unfair, and to this day, my ultimatum remains in place. As long as they tell lies about me, I'm going to tell the truth about them, and there's nothing they can do about it.